Saying that this is a quality episode would be an entire understatement, because we had a debut of a new episode director from Cloverworks today, and it's really telling just how this episode is just a step up from every episode so far that we have gotten from My Dress Up Darling. Now, I am not saying that the previous episodes are bad or lacking quality. In fact, every single episode of My Dress Up Darling has been out of this world in terms of quality, art and animation, direction. The team that's working on it has put everything they can, all their passion in to this project. But when I started this episode, before I even knew there was a new director, a new debuting director, I saw that something was different about this episode, and let's kind of explain. Look at this scene right here. This right here is just very telling to just how distinct this episode is. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it is the line work. The line work of today's episode is something that is radically different from the previous episodes. Now, as I've already said, the artwork of the previous episodes are great. They really do stand out. But when you look at the artwork, there is a different direction, a different flow taken. Like, there's a lot more detail in the hair of the characters. Like, seriously, look at the hair. Usually throughout My Dress Up Darling so far, there's been a lot of detail in the eyes. But you really see heavy detail in the hair, the way you get to see individual strands. Everything about it stands out. But also the signature, like, line work around the arms and body. It reminds me a lot of KyoAni. Now, I don't know if there's any KyoAni staff or ex-KyoAni staff that is working on this series, but when I looked at the actual visual art style of today's episode, it was very reminiscent of something you would see from KyoAni. But before I go any further with that, let's actually talk about just the debuting director and just what this really means for this episode. So, obviously, with a new debuting director and episode director, it really shows that there could be multiple different directions a story can be done. For instance, depending on a director, the direction of an episode can just be radically different in terms of its presentation with its art style and character moments, and that's really what shined throughout this episode. It was easily, as I've been saying every single week, this is now my current favorite episode of the entire anime, for good reason. I mean, this episode speaks for itself, and as I said, saying it's a quality episode is just a straight up understatement. It really is. There is no words that can begin to describe just how fantastic this episode was. And I know it seems like I'm just talking about the art and animation, but there's so much more that this episode does besides just that. It's just, the art and animation was just so in tune, so in sync with the content, that it really elevated the entire episode to a whole new level. It's kind of like when you watch Mushoku Tensei, when we watched it, and there were so many scenes at the beginning with immersive scenes of how, you know, the opening song plays over scenes to give more detail and development to certain characters, the environment, the world, etc. You know, stuff like that. And when you look at this episode, it has a very similar vibe, that the artwork really elevates and tells a story even without words. And that's one of the big reasons why I think many of us are drawn to manga, is that a lot of stories can be told just through the artwork without even dialogue bubbles. And so just looking at this presentation, I really hope to see more of this director in the future working on not just My Dress Up Darling, but other series going forward, because honestly, this is an impressive episode, an impressive feat. And the final 10 minutes of the episode, especially the, you know, the beach scene with Kitagawa and Gojo, is just beautiful, like a masterpiece almost in terms of quality. That's how good it actually is. So before I go any further with art animation, let's talk about the content of this episode and what the art animation elevated up. So one scene in particular that needs to be talked about is the Juju scene with Gojo, and seeing Gojo come to a realization about what it means or how it feels to have someone enjoy what they work on, fall in love with what they work on. That moment, that feeling of pride in yourself. And when you saw him start to cry, you might think he's upset, but no, he was overwhelmed by emotion, because he never understood what his grandpa felt when he's like, oh, it makes me very happy to see that, you know, you're enjoying it, it caught your eye and all that, these Hina dolls. You know, when he realized that Juju complimented his cosplay, you know, what he made for Kitagawa, he got very emotional because, you know, he felt pride. He felt pride in what he worked on. He didn't think that he was probably that good to catch that many people's eyes, especially someone of Juju's status, but she did get her eye caught, and she did say that she fell in love with the outfit that, you know, he made. And so it's a big deal. And I like that scene. It's a lot of character building and development for Gojo to kind of see that the world is opening up for him. He isn't just in a closed box anymore, and that the world is very vibrant, very different than he expected, and that entire beach scene kind of goes along with what happened with Juju and Gojo. You know, his world is really opening up. He's no longer just looking inside of a Hina doll shop and just working on dolls. He's getting to have so many different experiences that affect his work and allow him to better himself as an individual. It's a very beautiful moment, not just for Gojo, but also for Juju too, because she had a major moment, you know, of, you know, someone that is able to make outfits, and she had her first real interaction with someone that's able to make cosplay outfits to make her feel like she's becoming that said character. So let's talk about Juju since I'm already in that scene. So I find Juju's character very fascinating, because I feel like this might resonate a lot with cosplayers, because we all know, when it comes to fantasy stories and sci-fi stories, anime, manga, it's not real. It's all, you know, fiction, you know, it's all stuff that, you know, stories that people have written that's very, very fun, but it's not real. And there's oftentimes, I'm willing to bet, many of us out there have at least thought about it once, that you're like, man, I wish I can go to this said world, or man, I wish I could be that character, be in their shoes, or have these type of powers, etc. You know, stuff like that. I'm willing to bet you all of us out read and watch stuff, you know, have felt that way about something. And when you see Juju have that emotion, I resonated with that, because I remember growing up as a kid, watching Pokemon, and watching Dragon Ball Z and be like, man, I wish I could be one of these characters doing like the Kamehameha, or, you know, doing, you know, like, gotta catch them all, throw a Pokeball or something, you know, something like that. You know, I've always, you know, had that emotion growing up. And when I see Juju's plight and how she's like, I realized very quickly I couldn't be a magical girl because it's not possible. It isn't. It hit because it was a dream shattering. She realized that her dream was pretty much next to impossible. She would never truly be a magical girl. But when she discovered cosplay and started putting outfits on, she realized that she could actually become the said character, get into a little bit of role play, and kind of get in that same psyche. I think it's a very fascinating depiction, and I love what this episode does with Juju's character and more of her overall reason to be where she's at right now. I love that. I love Juju so much now, and I can't wait to see more of her character as we progress. I still don't think she's going to be a love interest for Gojo. I do feel like she might have feelings for Gojo, but overall I think she's going to be more interested in the outfits that he can make, while Kitagawa and Gojo are going to be the main, you know, romance throughout the story. So let's shift over to the other stuff of this episode. The beginning sequence, which I should have talked about first, is about, you know, Kitagawa getting to know, you know, Juju's sister, talking with her and getting to figure out kind of how a camera works, etc. And it's a really good moment to show the meaning of how individuals kind of come upon doing cosplays, or why they do cosplays, or why they take pictures. And, you know, there's many different passions and loves that are shared throughout this episode. Like, for instance, Gojo realizing that, you know, he took pride in what he made, the outfit, because Juju complimented him, to also seeing, you know, Juju's sister being like, I take photos because, you know, I think that my sister's very cute, and I want to capture those moments, share them with people to experience the exact same feeling that I'm experiencing. Or Kitagawa at the end when she takes a picture of Gojo. It just shows all the characters understanding each other's passions and falling in love with different things and understanding each other, a common bond, so to say. It's very beautiful. It's a very, very beautiful episode, and I feel like, as I've said in the beginning of this video, that the animator really elevated all these scenes with the beautiful direction of the art and animation, to the sound effects, the music, voice acting. Everything came in line to really just make something beautiful. And so, yeah, I really love those scenes. But one scene, though, that really stands out is the final moments of the episode with the beach. Just seeing Kitagawa and Gojo walking on the beach, just them, and you see how it's not even about cosplay, it's more of just hanging out. It's a more down-to-earth segment of the episode, because from this point on, like, up to this very point, it's always been about cosplay. You know, Kitagawa wanting to get into a character, you know, dress up as a character, Gojo having to make an outfit, stuff like that. Always been about cosplay. But the beach scene was not about that. It was just straight up a date. And it wasn't just a typical average date either that you would see in a normal romance slice life. It wasn't an amusement park or anything. It was just straight up on a beach, a beautiful scene where they just got, you know, some food, a burger, some fries, and then they dipped their feet in the water. A hawk stole their burger, which is hilarious, and there's a lot of detail and a lot of love and passion put into the scene, and many might just write it off as, oh, it's just beautiful art and animation, but there's so much more to that scene because it allows you to see the characters in a normal setting without what they're normally doing for the story, because this is something I've mentioned constantly throughout my years of talking about anime and manga, is that, yes, I love to see the plot flow. I love to see the plot continuing to move forward and seeing where the story's going to go, but there is often times that we don't see in stories where a character has to wind down. They're not progressing the plot, they're not progressing the story in anything crazy way, they're just resting and doing their day-to-day lives, maybe getting some food, going to sleep, etc. And these moments are very special to see how a character acts when they're not trying to progress the plot. And that entire segment with Kitagawa and Gojo is very telling of that. Just seeing how their overall lifestyle would be without cosplay, without having to worry about making outfits, etc. Without Juju being there, they're able to function normally. Beautiful segment. Love that, and I love everything it represents. I want more scenes like that. It's a great episode. But to add a cherry on top, though, of all of this, is the final lines of Gojo at the end of the episode, when he looks at the ocean, and he's like, it's beautiful. And they didn't give us a pretty fancy little flashback to remind us what this meant, but as a reminder, it is very telling. When Gojo says something is beautiful, he really means it, because he said very early on in the story, he doesn't just say the words beautiful willy-nilly. He only uses it when he really thinks something is truly beautiful, which is why when he said that Kitagawa is very beautiful, it was so impactful and why she kind of started to fall in love with Gojo. And so when he says that the ocean is beautiful, you can see by Kitagawa's overall reaction that she realizes this, and that's why she says, like, hey, we can go view more things together, we can go on a journey, etc. It's a big deal because she wants to show things to Gojo to allow him to experience that emotion time and time again, and I find that great. It's a great moment and all that for Kitagawa's character and Gojo's character, and I love just the development of how those words really matter quite a bit. But, yeah, that's pretty much about it, though, when it comes to this week's episode. It's fantastic from start to finish. Best episode yet of the story. I cannot get enough of it, and once again, just praises to everyone that worked on this episode. But I love you all. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like. It helps me out a lot. And if you want to see more of my content appear in your YouTube feed, then, you know, hit the subscribe button or the bell icon down below, or hit both, doesn't matter. But with that, guys, be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.